Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting of the Ellsworth Planning Board to order. March 3rd, 2021, 5:30. Will each of the planning board members identify yourselves, please? I'm John Fink, Chair.
John DeLeo, Vice Chair.
Rick Lyles, member and apparently secretary.
Nelson Giel, member.
Molly Friedland, alternate.
Patrick Lyons, alternate.
Thank you. Is there a motion regarding the minutes from February 3rd meeting?
Move acceptance.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion, corrections to the minutes? Okay, all in favor, please show a hand. Thank you. Okay. Okay, the next item of business is introduction to the Ellsworth Green Plan presented by Green Ellsworth. Who is here from Green Ellsworth?
That would be me, Chairman. Mary Blackstone here. I just have a few slides, so I'm going to share my screen if Nate will let me.
Go right ahead.
Okay. And there we go. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you folks this evening. I'm here on behalf of Green Ellsworth. It's a volunteer organization that has just undertaken 4 years of green planning and small projects for the city. On February the 1st, we released the draft of the Ellsworth Green Plan for consultation with the community. And that will be going on through the end of March. It's available now at www.greenellsworth.org. I have that link at the end of this presentation if you want to catch it then as well. So this is the cover photo for our plan. And also at the end, a prize to anybody who can immediately identify where it's from. The plan is a culmination of a process that began in 2017 when the Ellsworth Garden Club, in partnership with the city, and more specifically, several of you will know former city planner Michelle Gagnon. She jointly hosted a public forum in January of 2017 to find out if Ellsworth citizens were interested in contributing to a sustainability plan for the city. The answer was a pretty resounding yes. We went away with all kinds of volunteers interested in contributing. And we also went away with a mission that was pretty clearly stated at the meeting. The mission to make Ellsworth a model green community, to work towards making our individual and collective approach to human and natural systems more sustainable. That was the first of what is now 21 public forums and consultations that have been the ground zero for this plan. Michelle specifically saw the plan as underpinning the revised comprehensive plan. And that is why we have recommended that the city's top budget priority for 2021-2022 should be moving forward with the comprehensive plan update. Plan contains major chapters, 4 of them, and they relate to specific focus areas which seem to be the high priority for the citizens of Ellsworth. Each chapter has recommendations that relate to the work of the planning board. They relate to city ordinances and the UDO in particular. So there is a lot in each chapter that would be of interest to this particular group. We're now doing a series of rollout Zoom presentations. So we did an overview presentation last Tuesday. We did a water presentation last Thursday. If it was Tuesday this week, it was food and farming. So that's what we did last night. And we have recordings of all of those presentations that will be available on the Green Ellsworth website. So far, they've been very well attended and lots of good things coming out of those sessions. Our upcoming presentation tomorrow evening is on land. And that presentation, if you were to choose just one to attend, I'd suggest that the planning board members would be most interested in that chapter. There is a significant section that addresses specifically things such as the UDO zoning and also things like form-based codes. So that presentation is tomorrow night. And then next week, we have sessions that address the infrastructure chapter. We have 2 sessions that are going to roll that out. The Tuesday evening presentation will be on transportation and walkability. And then the next presentation will be on something that you've had a bit to do with, and that is alternative energy sources and solid waste. So that's next Thursday evening. We've been very fortunate to have some really good partners who have helped to produce this. And they're all contributing to the future implementation of the plan. We have nearly 100 people who are involved in consulting, researching, and writing across 14 committees. And we estimate across the public forums that we organized, across the written submissions, surveys, interviews, etc., that we used for public input, we had as many as 2,000 stakeholders. So I just want to say that Green Ellsworth is certainly really looking forward to the implementation of this plan. Once our consultations are finished in March, then we'll be finalizing the plan in April. And the focus of our work will be on implementation, in engaging as many community members as possible, working with the city to try to move forward what are a large number of recommendations in the plan. It's a 10-year plan. We've got 10 years to work on those, but it's still a very ambitious plan, even for that time period. So that's all the pretty pictures I have to show you. I'd be happy to answer questions. And going forward, we would be very happy to work with the planning board to do a workshop around the specifics of implications of the plan, work with staff or whatever to give further input on exactly what the plan is about and how it relates specifically to land use management. So at this point, perhaps I'll stop sharing my screen and just go to answer any questions that you folks might have. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Mary, there must be a link posted someplace to join the Zoom meeting. Where can I find that?
You go to the website that I just shared. It's www.greenellsworth.org. And so you just look on the front page when it just comes up. There's a link. There are links directly to to register for the presentations.
It is also available on the City of Ellsworth website on the news section on the homepage if you want to see it there as well.
Yeah, thank you, Nate.
It's also been posted by Heart of Ellsworth and Green Ellsworth and a whole bunch of people on Facebook as well. So if you're Facebook mavens, all the sign up stuff is out there.
There are Facebook event pages for every one of them.
I mean, if you haven't taken a look at it, I looked at it briefly. It's quite a massive document. I think somewhere maybe in the neighborhood of 200 pages, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is a long document. A large portion of it is an appendix which provides summaries of the recommendations. So it pulls the recommendations out of the chapters so you can actually review it. Folks on the planning board might like to start there. It's a good start. But in addition, the website actually has a lot of support materials. The only two appendices in the actual printed or full document are those summaries of recommendations, but there's a lot of supporting material that's under each of the chapter headings on the website. Lots of data, lots of things like a build-out analysis you can access.
But there seem to be, quite a few instances, topics that there would have to be quite a few changes to the ordinance, and Mary touched on the comprehensive plan need to be updated, but there also would need to be several changes made to the ordinance. And we know even if the council approves the expenditure to update the ordinance, I mean, that's not a quick process. And so we're kind of, some of the stuff in the green plan needs those changes to be made in order to accomplish their wishes. So maybe we get the chance to throw a more of a emphasis at the council to fund the comprehensive plan, but perhaps also at the same time, Elaine, as we start to look at what changes we need to make to the ordinance going forward. Even before, we do the comprehensive plan. I mean, the comprehensive plan, if we started today, probably won't be done for 2 years.
We're in, fortunately, Green Ellsworth, unlike a committee that was struck specifically for writing the plan, or a business that was contracted to write the plan, we're not going anywhere. So we are in this for the long haul. And I think everybody on Green Ellsworth recognizes that it is the long haul, but the real attraction of doing a plan was that now we have stages. We have stages that we have to go through in order to get there. And obviously, the comprehensive plan is ground zero for that. It's really, we're not going to be changing any ordinances until we have a comprehensive plan.
Anything else from anyone else have questions or comments?
Mr. Fink, we do have one person in Zoom world, if you will, attendees, that has their hand raised. Their name is Paul Marino. I'm assuming he or she may want to talk. So if you would permit, I can let them have a word anyway.
Sure, go ahead, please.
All right, give me one moment.
I believe the Marinos filed comments for the site plan sketch review we're going to do. I mean, they may have comments for the Ellsworth Green plan too, but I believe there's Marinos.
Yeah, I'll check real quick with them. We'll let them speak really quick. Hello, Paul. Could you unmute?
Yes, we were just trying to make sure that we were connected. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Hey, Mr. Fink, would you like me to promote them to a presenter so they can be also in the meeting, or just leave them in their current status?
Oh, for the sketch plan?
Yes.
Sure, have them join the meeting.
Excellent.
Sure.
Okay.
I have a question for Mary, and I don't know if it can be answered quickly. But as far as I'm just bringing up the plan here now, and yes, it's large, and I don't think I'll have time to kind of read through it while we're speaking. But as far as land use goes, and thoughts on how the code would be impacted, can you summarize maybe some of the major goals in that regard?
There's a fairly long list, but I guess I would say that this is a generalization, but I would say that the input that we received from the community was that people wanted greater input on how their neighborhoods were evolving. And although none of those people talked about form-based codes, when Isabel Mancinelli from the College of the Atlantic did a workshop with us on that particular topic, it became clear that a lot of people in the community would take very well to the issue of form-based codes. And to us, it seemed as though that could be a really good solution for perhaps working with particular districts or neighborhoods in the community as a starter, and trying to get, get the community to do some definitions with respect to standards that they expected, that they wanted, that they thought would create the neighborhood that they'd like to see. And I think that from a planning board perspective, oftentimes I think you're, you and the people who present to you are faced with community responses where people feel, oh, how dare you? We want some say here and we can't get a word in edgewise and that kind of thing. And I think a great place to start would be working with neighborhoods and components of the community to try to get them to think about exactly where are the boundaries, what would they like to have in a neighborhood. And it seemed to me that people were very willing to go there and to press their own expectations, as well as to say what they envisioned at the moment. So I just, I'm just seizing on one component of that land use section of the chapter. But what we did in the process of doing the plan was to try to take the community input at the level it came and then try to look at it practically is how is this actionable and what could we do to make better conformance, make people feel that what they wanted was actually part of the direction we were going in.
Mary, could I ask you to just give a brief definition of form-based code?
Well, Elena's probably the planner here, and she could probably do a better job than that. But it's not a zoning approach. It's looking at a component of the community from the standpoint of what do we want that to look like? What do we want the standards to be with respect to, it can be any number of things, building materials, landscape expectations, density. You know, there are a whole bunch of things that you use to define what that particular section of the community is going to look like, is how it's going to operate. Elena, please do a better job than I can if you want.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. I did have experience administering a form-based code in the community I just came from, at least in our central business district. And if I were to describe it briefly, I would say it's form-based because it's more concerned with the form, the physical form of the development than it is with the uses contained within it. So it would be, you know, maybe in the downtown, you have an existing urban form. You have buildings with their fronts right up against the sidewalk, covering most of their lot. There aren't many one-story buildings, for example. So you would say that maybe new buildings need to maintain that same form and be less concerned with zoning in the sense of, well, here's where you can have retail and here's where you can have houses. And it's more creating the urban design and mixing uses among them. But it could be a lot of things, like Mary said.
I think one of the attractive things for me around form-based is that mixing of things that can happen in that particular neighborhood or district, insofar as it's more natural and ultimately walkable, in the sense that, you know, if you have an exclusively residential district, you need perhaps a allowance in order to be able to build a corner store, something like that that's going to sell groceries and newspapers and milk and all of that. In this kind of an environment, you might actually consider that that's not just allowable, but it's desirable. So people in that particular neighborhood would want those amenities that are not necessarily residential per se.
Mary, a diversion here. Your cat, who was
Sorry.
behind you. No, is tortoiseshell?
I guess you would call her that. She is very unusually marked. And so, yes, a bit tortoiseshell, I would say.
Okay, yeah, so was mine.
She definitely likes sitting on the back of my chair when I'm doing Zoom meetings.
Of course, well, I believe that electronic disturbances attract cats.
I think you're right.
So, okay, is there any more questions or comments? And thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing you folks again at another presentation of the Ellsworth Green.
Well, this has, I believe, been brought about by Rick Lyles, who suggested that we have the presentation.
Yes, and thanks to Rick for making that happen.
It was literally the least I could do.
Oh,
Heaven help us if you want to do more, huh?
Well, there you go, babe.
okay. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Mr. Canavan, you are the fire inspector now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, welcome aboard. We'll be seeing you regularly, I suppose.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now the next item is the sketch plan review for a major use site development entitled Grindle Pit for East Skip Grindle and Sons Incorporated. The proposal is to create a 10-acre gravel pit and access road on a 45-acre parcel, tax map 60, lot 8, located on North Street. All of the subject property is located in the rural and limited residential zones. Before I call on you, Steve, I would just like to mention, for the benefit of anyone public listening in, a sketch plan is a meeting where it's a relatively informal meeting between the applicant and the planning board, so that each of us can have feedback as to what the applicant's intending and what issues the planning board sees in front of us, and which can then be incorporated in the actual application. So, is someone, Steve, representing the applicant?
Good evening, Steve Salisbury. I represent Everett Skip Grindle. Purchased this property last fall sometime with the intentions to have me develop this application for gravel extraction on a portion of the property. The property is sandwiched between Patriot Road, North Street, Kids Piece to the northwest, and Graham Lake. We propose to construct a new access road off of North Street to access the gravel pits. That will be our primary access. We'll leave secondary access to Patriot Road, because one of the owners of Skip Grindles and Son live on Patriot Road, and he wants to maintain that access from his home, Patriot Road, to his property. I've understood we have some comments from the neighbors, which I have, and we'll address those in a future application. I'll pop this map up for the public to see, maybe. So there is Graham Lake to the upper right, and North Street down in the lower right corner.
Steve, you gotta share your screen with us.
Oh, I haven't shared it yet. No, yeah, geez.
It's a nice narrative.
Rookie mistake. What am I gonna do? Is it sharing now?
Getting there.
Yep. There we go. All right. So the public can see this. I'll go with that again. Graham Lake to the upper right. North Street on the lower right, and Kids Piece in the upper left. The blue areas are the two areas we propose extraction. And the new access road will come along the south, from North Street along the south borders of those two gravel pits and connect up with an existing road that leads out to Patriot Road. Where my little hand cursor is there's Kids Piece Way, and there's the existing access road now. So I intended to have a complete application. I went by my template where I was working with Richard McMullen last year on his little gravel pit on the Bucksport Road, but Elena blew me out of the water when we realized we're over a sand and gravel aquifer, which kicks in some requirements for water testing. We've installed one test well and are in the process of installing a second test well this week, which we will draw water quality samples from. So we'll have baseline testing before we start any operations there. And we'll continue to monitor that water quality as the project continues on until its end. So, you know, I asked the city to keep this agenda item in front of you so I could give the planning board's initial feedback for when I come to you next time. I'll have a more complete application for you and address any concerns you have. Thank you.
Okay, board members, pile on.
Okay, well, I'll start off. Steve, you mentioned the aquifer, and I did see that. Is that the aquifer? I went on the city website under the tax maps, and it appears that there's a aquifer that comes across North Street, where you're going to put in the entrance about 100 yards into the property. Is that the aquifer you talk about, Steve?
Yeah, you got it. It runs out right there before you get to the field, even according to the state map.
Okay. And then the DOT entrance permit, I noticed they issued the permit, but I was kind of curious as to what the site distance was. I mean, our standards are a little bit different than the state, so I was just curious what they, if you've measured the site distance.
I have not. God, you can see 1,000 feet towards Waltham and probably almost that much looking towards Ellsworth because of the way the curve is configured. Actually gives us pretty good visibility towards Ellsworth too.
Okay.
But I can measure that. I'll make a note and measure that.
Okay. I also noticed that on their permit, I'm trying to remember back to the gravel pit that was approved on a Bucksport Road. Didn't DOT say that he had to pave in like 20, 30 feet on the Bucksport Road?
I believe you're right. On McMullen's, they did ask for that.
But it didn't appear that that was a requirement for this gravel pit.
That's correct.
Is it possible from the staff point of view, if we could give DOT a call to see what the difference, we should try and stay consistent, I would think.
Yeah, I can also chat with the Public Works.
Okay. And one question about that one of the owners wants to maintain access through Patriot Road. I was actually up there today and I drove down into Kids Piece Way, and I happened to be a dual axle dump truck going in there. And I would note that that definitely is not a road that dump trucks would want to be going in on. If a car and a dump truck met, there's really not enough room there for both. So definitely all access should be through North Street. I also noted that Patriot Road is also posted this time of the year. So obviously, heavy trucks wouldn't be able to use Patriot Road.
North Street is posted too, so.
Well, I was wondering about that. Does that go back to when RF Jordan went in there, and didn't they post a bond with DOT to get permission to use North Street? Steve?
You got it. Yep, the posting starts right after McDevitt Way, where Ralph Jordan's entrance is. So from there towards the intersection of Patriot Way, that's posted road.
Okay. And I mean, one thing I was wondering about was, I mean, how much activity, how much noise could affect Kids Piece? I mean, Kids Piece I know has changed over the years. I know at one time they had a big dormitory population, but I think it's mostly day people now. But I've been out of police work for 7 years, so I don't know what kind of clientele they're dealing with now. But I think it'd be important to have someone from Kids Piece address the board as to what effect noise. Last I knew, they're dealing with a lot of autistic kids. Does this affect them in a bad way? Kids Piece there's buildings within a stone's throw of where these gravel pits are going. I think it's really important that we hear from someone at Kids Piece.
Just a question, just a follow-up question on, while John's looking at his notes for his next barrage. In terms of the noise, the ordinances that we look at are, really pretty silent, so to speak, on noise. Is there a separate, and this is totally my ignorance, is there a separate noise ordinance that for the city itself and for operations of things like this? I guess that's
Yes,
mostly
there is.
for Dwight or whoever.
No, this is a noise ordinance. We can't start work in Ellsworth until 6 a.m.
Does the noise ordinance talk about mitigation of noise or anything like that, or what? I mean, I get that you can't start before 6 a.m., but is there anything about the maximum amount of noise that can be produced by a land use, especially the one that's adjacent to residential areas and Kids Piece for that matter?
Yeah,
Well, go ahead, Steve.
No, all I was gonna say is I know there's decimal limits during the nighttime quiet hours. I don't know that there's any limits in the daytime hours.
That's an hour ordinance you're talking about?
Yes.
And Dwight or Elena, is it possible to find? It must be, obviously. It would be neat to have a copy of the noise ordinance just so we could review it in this context. I mean, I realize that we're not in charge of enforcing the noise ordinance or whatever, but it still might be kind of neat to see what that looks like, or sounds like.
Yeah, I can email you a copy tomorrow.
That'd be great. I would appreciate that. You might want to, if anybody else cares, you might want to email everybody, but if they don't care, that's okay.
I will do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, are you ready for your next batch?
Oh, actually, I was all done, Rick.
Okay. Well, I have a couple of questions about drainage then. Okay. You talked about, well, first of all, it would be neat to have, kind of a drainage plan sort of thing to show or a contour plan rather, show what the contours are going to be like down the line. So we can really take a look at what the drainage looks like. My understanding is that you're saying that the drainage stuff that comes off the pit or whatever will be contained on the site and in the pit. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep,
Okay.
There'll be a bowl, so to speak, created, and the water will be self-contained, but yeah, it's not unusual for us to show the finished grading.
Okay, that's cool. That's what I understood. So that's good. My question though is that that there's basically a rise in the middle of the gravel pit area. Is that correct?
That's right.
And towards the lake, on existing land, towards the lake, that's as much as an 18% grade, which would be, prime for a lot of overland runoff if it were to, be able to run off and onto the outside of the pit area. So my question is, how deep does the pit go relative to the existing land? Because it strikes me as that it's going to be really difficult to take off the top of that rise and maintain drainage to the inside. You know, how far down do you go before you hit the gravel?
Oh, the gravel's right to the surface, and I don't expect this pit to be any deeper than maybe like 15 feet. Might be
Okay,
a little higher right there in the middle, because that is the high point, but
so you
No.
don't anticipate the bottom of the pit being anywhere near the elevation of the lake, is that correct?
it'll be close, but it certainly won't be below it.
Okay,
We found that already with the monitoring well we put in. We're about 5 feet above the lake level with the water table.
okay. And, but tell me again how the taking off the top of the hill to get to gravel is really going to be able to be drained to the outside versus the inside.
No, it'll be contained inside. We'll be just constantly digging a bowl,
Okay,
and there won't be no stormwater will leave the pit area.
okay. And is that pretty common practice in terms of operating a gravel pit? Because again, I profess my ignorance in being a gravel
Yeah,
pit.
no, not a problem. But yes, that's the preferred method of stormwater management with the state of Maine. This will be regulated by the state of Maine because it's over 5 acres in size. So we got to meet all their performance criteria.
Okay, in terms of the access roads and stuff, I just want to reemphasize what John had said about the entrance that comes off or that goes in by Kids Piece. I was also out there today, and at a separate time, I did not see John. But in any event, that road that goes in and services the existing pit is really narrow. I mean, that's just kind of like a little haul road. I mean, it strikes me. And are these roads, is that road going to be widened at all as a result of, the new road alignment going through this site?
We talked about that with the fire department, and we may not. We may be able to satisfy the fire department with the new road that's going to go in there. It should be wide enough, and there'll be enough turnaround spots. And like I say, I don't envision 99% of our truck traffic will be in the new road. That's the whole point of putting in that new road. So
That goes out the north.
yeah.
And how many vehicles or trucks or whatever do you expect a day to be using that road?
New road?
Any old road,
Any of them?
all of them.
Don't quote me, but I think Grindle's crew they have many of those, what they call one-ton truck. Basically a little oversized pickup truck with a couple of yard dump body.
Okay,
And then they've got 2 bigger trucks. It would be rare to have 2 trucks meet each other coming and going from the site. It won't be more than a trip or 2 in an hour, probably, unless they're working right across the road for some reason.
okay. And was the pit in operation today?
I don't know. I wasn't up there today. When they bought the property, there was a little pit that existed right next to the Kids Piece property, and they are presently doing a little bit of excavation there.
Okay, because when I was there, the gate was open.
Yeah.
And they could have easily been in there because I did not venture down that highway, so don't know what it looked like. But so, is there any sense of whether most vehicles would use the North Street entrance or the one that goes out by Kids Piece?
I could certainly say the new road would be the primary access
To North.
to North Street. Yes.
I mean, I think considering, Rick, you saw the condition, the width of Kids Piece Road. I think that'd be, and this doesn't help Mr. Marino because he lives right next to where the entrance is coming out on North Street. But the road going into Kids Piece is certainly not wide enough for a wheeler dump truck and a car coming out to meet and pass by safely. It's just too narrow.
I concur, and it's one thing to have load limits, but it would seem to me that if you have increased truck traffic, especially on the entrance that goes in by Kids Piece, that road is going to last not at all. I mean, trucks do all the damage on roads, and gravel trucks especially. It's it's just a fact, right? And you're going to have a problem with additional wear and tear on the road, regardless of where this comes out. I get that you just can't, prohibit a use because of that. But I would really discourage the use of the road that goes to Kids Peace, because that's just, that just seems like a bad deal to me.
Go ahead, Nick.
Go ahead.
Doesn't the ordinance require using the road that has the least traffic when you have access to roads?
I think it does say something similar to that, actually.
So that would be.
Let me read it for you, John. Let me read it for you, John, because Carrie mentioned that in an email to the neighbor, Joyce Gaddis. Multiple frontages, where a lot has frontage on 2 or more access ways, including residential and commercial driveways. The primary access to the lot shall be provided from the access way where there is less traffic congestion or fewer potential hazards to traffic and pedestrians. In one regard, you could say that Patriot Way and Kids Beach Way has less traffic. However, I certainly don't think there's fewer potential hazards to traffic and pedestrians on Patriot Way and Kids Beach Way.
Do you really think that there's more traffic on Patriot Way than there is on North Street?
No. What I'm saying is I think using Patriot Way, especially Kids Beach Way, especially with a wheeler dump truck that's hauling 14 yards of gravel, is a hazard to the traffic on that road. It's a hazard to, I'm not sure if kids walk down that road. I mean, I think if they plan on building that access road in from North Street, I'd be more than happy to say that all the truck traffic has to come in off North Street. And I think that section, it's 9071L, I think it allows us to do that.
I'll also note that for the shoreland zone ordinance, extraction, the final, so this is section 410.11, subsection 4. It's in keeping with the purpose of this article, the planning board may impose such conditions as are necessary to minimize the adverse impacts associated with mineral extraction operation on surrounding uses and resources. I interpret that in conjunction with the road provision. I think we have the authority just to say you have to use North Street. You can only use Patriot Way in cases of emergency. So I think that's something the board should consider, and should consider considering the intensity of a mineral extraction. We've decided to zone this property both in the shoreland and for the rural to permit these activities, but in doing so, the board has relatively broad discretion to ensure to reduce impacts to its neighbors. On that same vein, one thing, Steve, I'm looking at is it also says in that same section under sub 2, extraction operations should not be permitted within 50 feet horizontal distance of any property line. Up above, which I see that you've done that, but up above the beginning of that, no part of any extraction operation shall be permitted within 100 feet of the water. And I think that can be read. You feel free to disagree with me in that second sentence. While it doesn't say no part of any extraction operation, it just says extraction operations. I think that can be read broadly to consider whether the proposed road should be set back 50 feet from property lines. I don't know, the Pattersons are right there. I don't know where the home is. And this is not, if it's possible, it's something to consider. If there's serious limitations due to the nature of the property, that's one thing. But I think trucks coming and going are part of an extraction operation. And thus you should consider a 50-foot buffer on property lines for the roads as well. And then last, Steve, have there been any proposed form of buffering whatsoever in the forms of plantings or the way that, I know you can, doing extraction activities, you can kind of create a berm or things of that nature, especially along the Kids Peace property, considering I think I'm not a medical professional, but I know if it is children with autism, sound can have a significant impact on them. So I think we want to think about how we can mitigate sound. Our ordinance is broad, but there are provisions that help reference, what are appropriate sounds for various areas. I think it'd be helpful to get an understanding of the equipment's use and what the decibel ranges are of the equipment for the board to consider. Again, it is a permitted use, but we do have discretion to mitigate adverse impacts. And I respect property rights, but I also want the board to think about how this will impact the budding property, especially Kids Peace. And if there's ways for the applicant to provide meaningful mitigation of noise. And I also, I've looked at Google Maps, but if there's if there's any tree buffering that already exists on the property, considering ways to maintain that, again, to reduce noise and visual impacts. It looks from the map, from the aerial view on Google, there's some trees right along the shore. I don't know the topography, obviously, but maintaining, you have to maintain it within 100 feet, the trees anyways, but just, utilizing the property as it exists to ensure buffering and considering some ways to improve noise mitigation, especially along the Kids Peak portion of the property, something I'd like to, have you guys consider, Steve.
Okay, we show the 50-foot buffer between the property lines and 100 feet to the lake. That vegetation will remain in its present state, except where we go in with the new road. The modern equipment, other than beepers on the equipment, the backup beepers, it's pretty quiet. These new clean diesel engines run very quietly. I've got 20 some gravel pits that I maintain the permitting on, and all over Hancock County, and get very few noise complaints other than the dump trucks coming and going.
Well, I get that. But I would be interested in knowing, the sorters and the graders, when those things are shaking, that makes a lot of noise. I'd be interested in knowing what the equipment is that they're using, what sound mitigation. I get what you're saying, Steve, but if this is a facility, I'd like to get some confirmation. I'm not familiar with it, but that has autistic children with autism, at that facility. It's well known that noise, they're more sensitive to noise. And, part of the concept of sense is it's in the eye of the beholder. Here it's in the eye of the hearer. And I am concerned about that. So I'd like just, for you to consider that, Steve, and at least maybe give us some more information on the decibel levels. That if the equipment's sheets that, whatever equipment they're using, they all have data sheets, projected noise levels. And we can compare those to Maine DEP has ranges of what's considered acceptable noise for various industrial operations. And again, we've got a sensitive population of our city utilizing property right next door. I think it's to consider that before granting anything.
Anyone else have?
Yeah, just a comment on the effectiveness of a berm over by Kids Peace. If you look at the elevation over by Kids Peace and the elevation on top of that hill, they're about even, okay? So the thing is that you have to worry about that a little bit when you put the buffer in, and especially if you using the buffer as some sort of noise mitigation, because a stand of trees does not do it with respect to noise mitigation. I have one other question though about the zoning itself, and I realize that and again, this is my first experience on the board with the shoreland zoning issue. But my reading was that there's a setback from the lake edge that's required, but I believe that there's also a setback that's required from adjacent wetlands and so forth. And so if you have lake into wetlands, that the boundary of the shoreline zone area is based on the limit of the upland wetland. Is that correct or not correct? Or staff, can you help me out here? I'm floundering at this point. In any event, I think that you need to show on the map the extent of the shoreland zoning and where the different zoning, classifications come into effect here.
Yeah, the staff asked me to do that already.
I think there are wetlands there, and that's something which you'll notice.
Excuse me, but before members of the public speak, one, I need to open the public hearing, which I have not done yet.
Sorry.
And I must also say that I know the Marinos from a number of years ago. So that is now out there.
We don't know who you are. Sorry,
So-
I'm supposed to speak. I'm kidding.
So any other members of the board have questions or comments?
I was just curious if Dwight had an answer to Rick's question about the
Oh.
shoreland zoning and the setback. If that 100-foot includes setback from the water itself or from the wetland?
Typically, if it's a forested wetland, it won't impact the setback from the water. But if it's something like a meadow swale, like you'd see in a beaver dam or something like that, it could be taken as the setback would be to the edge of that wetland. So Steve's going to determine what these are. The staff has asked him to determine what these are, what type of wetlands they are, and then he'll have to, if he needs to make adjustments, he will.
Thank you.
So is the planning board finished? Evidently. I'd like to open the public hearing. Members of the public may speak, and I ask that before you speak, you identify yourself. And Mr. Marino, would you like to speak?
Yes, I would. Hi, it's Paul Marino and my wife Carolyn from 440 North Street, right on the next to the property. Let me first say something about Kids Peace. We very often, not in the snow, see people from Kids Peace, and obviously sometimes unsupervised, come through that property. And numerous times this past year, for example, they go and walk in the cemetery. I don't know why the cemetery. I see them in the water. I can look from my property and see that they've come on that property and down to the shoreline. And they, you may not be able to keep people from, or children from Kids Peace off that property. So there are other safety concerns that are to me an issue. They use that property. They may be trespassing, but these are kids from Kids Peace, and I think you're going to find that they will not stay at Kids Peace. The other thing is there are no trees by the shoreline on a lot of that property. From the lake, you can see up. It goes steep at the beginning, and the reason is a lot of that property is what looks to me like solid rock. I know some places where you enter the water there, it looks like just a sheet of rock. And that raises a number of questions to me. Dust. These are dusty operations, not just noisy. not only will the sound travel across the lake very easily to Kids Peace, not necessarily through trees, because a lot of it does not have trees, but on top of that, so will dust. And as I said, these are very dusty operations. So I don't think there is a barrier on a lot of this property at all. There is on some of it, but I don't think it is where the 7.5 acre pit is proposed. I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't been on the land to see exactly where they've staked out the place that it will be, but that's from memory, and looking at it from the water's edge. So I believe this operation will be clearly visible on the lake and heard across the lake. But there are other issues. The 100-foot buffer, there are state regulations, and in my questions, I make reference to one of the state agencies that has told me that anything over 5 acres, you need to contact them. And they do have buffer requirements and other things. The other issue is they may need a permit because of the state permit, because of the wetlands, and that needs to be investigated. And I mentioned the regulation in my list of questions that's specific for this whole question. So there are a lot of issues, but getting back to that surface and whether it's largely rock and not simply loose gravel, the big question for me is also blasting. Will there be a need, if this is like one solid piece of rock, to blast? Because that brings up a whole host of additional questions, not just noise and dust. And so I think we need to know, will there be some blasting to loosen that rock in order to extract it? I have a friend who told me that they had a gravel pit not near one of their dams. I think it was the Navasink River in New York, and it actually did damage to the dam because of the blasting, even though it wasn't close to the site. I mean, that's just one example, but we need to know whether there will be any need for blasting. And I have submitted my 9 questions. I think I don't know whether I should go through them or not.
Well, at this point, this meeting is, as I said, a sketch plan. We're not going into any merits or detail unless the board has questions, and those have been expressed. As far as the state permit, the planning board of Ellsworth is not responsible to make sure that the applicant notifies the state. I would suggest that if there are state requirements in licensing, anything like that, if the applicant doesn't get it, they're not going in operation because the state will forbid it. Our process here is to apply the Ellsworth regulations and law to the project. And if they pass the requirements of the city of Ellsworth, then that is separate from the state. So this is not unusual. There are many things that also involve the state, and the state has a separate procedure for that. As I suggested, if they don't meet the state regulations, they're not going anywhere. So as far as my experience of many decades ago as a code officer myself in other towns, damage due to blasting is not something that is covered in ordinance, but there's certainly, in cases where that has happened, the perpetrator, the one responsible, has wound up paying for that. And they often, in such cases, there have been pre-inspections done by the operator, and any damage shown after that is compensated by the operator. But that's just recollection from many years ago. So,
So it might only be the noise issue. If there is, I don't know, and I'm sure that can be
They
mitigated.
would have to meet Ellsworth's
Yes,
requirements under the noise ordinance, which as I recall, is not, you won't be happy with. Um, So I trust that you will be with us for the preliminary application and the final as well. And don't refrain from encouraging your neighbors to also participate and observe. Because very often without public input, issues are not brought to the planning board that we should know about. So,
thank you.
and also bear in mind that we're constrained by the ordinances which we wind up working with. So some things which some of us would like to see are beyond our purview. So,
Thank you, John.
but certainly don't hesitate to bring things up that you think are pertinent. Is there anything, Steve, do you have anything more for us? Anything you'd like to ask us?
No, I'm all set. I appreciate the comments.
Okay, anyone else have anything to say before I entertain a motion to adjourn?
Let me just ask Steve, I thought I read, just looking through it again, I couldn't find it. I thought I had read that there would not be blasting. Am I remembering that incorrectly?
No, I believe I put that in the narrative. I no idea what the neighbor's talking about. There's no bedrock up there. We haven't hit it anyway, and all the test pitting that we've done. There's gravel, sand, and clay.
Okay, I thought I recalled reading that.
Yeah, I think the closest thing to blasting, and this is a reach, you mentioned potentially crushing gravel and rock on site. So obviously that's not blasting, but it's a noisy thing though, nonetheless.
And just to let Mr. Marino know, in the application, there is a small section on dust control of what they plan on doing. Perhaps staff could give you a copy of the
Yes,
application if that's allowed.
I did see that. My only concern was that there's an open area to the lake, and I don't know exactly whether that's where they're talking about doing an operation and the wetlands. That was my concern. Thank you.
I would also just add, we did receive some comments and questions from another abutter, Joyce Gaddis, 48 Patriot Road. So if those haven't been forwarded to the applicant, we can share those.
And those sorts of questions would be directly pertinent to the following meetings, where we actually take action on the application. The full extent of which we don't have the full application at this point. A sketch plan doesn't require that. So are we finished here?
I'm finished with the gravel pit, but before we go, I got one question.
I just
Okay.
I have one question, John. I know we can kind of go and check out the road, but is a site walk part of a major site plan review for the planning board?
That would be something that we can address at the next meeting. Or in fact, we can address it now. Does the board wish to do a site visit?
I would like to have the opportunity to see the property, just to get a sense of things. Again, I mean, I know this is sketch plan and, there's still a lot of ground to cover, but I think, considering it's on the lake, and it abuts a school for children with autism, I'd just like to get it, maybe many of my concerns will be addressed by seeing the property and the topography and all that, but I would appreciate the opportunity.
Elena? can you coordinate a site visit with Steve and the rest of us?
We certainly can. I guess I would just,
And of course, you will want to be there too.
I will.
So
Would you rather do it now, or would you rather do it once you have the complete preliminary application?
I would suggest waiting for to have the complete application so we have a better idea of what we're dealing with. But it wouldn't hurt to start it rolling in advance.
Sure. I guess perhaps the applicant can also, or the applicant's representative can give us a sense of when he
Yeah.
might want to be back, because doing a
Yeah.
groundwater impact analysis does take some time.
Probably, I don't know that I'll make the April meeting. I think the submission deadline's like next week, and I've still got to install that well and test the water quality and wait for the hydrogeologist to get the water quality sampling report back, and he's gonna write a report.
Yeah, I would suggest the warmer the.
I'd prefer to wait till the black flies come out before I brush up there, so you won't hang around too long.
Yeah, it'll be a quick one that way, Steve.
No. So it's a balance between warmer weather
Yes.
and everything else. So the warmer weather, the penalty is of the black flies.
Well, I think that's something that the city staff should take care of for us.
Black flies? Good.
Yeah. What the hell?
Well, it's the planning department. They should plan in advance to mitigate black flies
Yeah,
without hazardous chemicals.
there you go.
I think it would help too if we were able to see the property without any snow on the ground.
Yeah, I was thinking about that this afternoon when I was pondering whether or not to drive down the driveway beyond the gate, and I decided not to do that for a variety of reasons, but it might be nice to see what goes on beyond the gate, so.
Well, if the black flies are out, we'll just make sure Dwight's there.
What, he's a decoy?
Well,
I think of 8, I'm not sure.
Bird dog.
So it sounds like maybe we can wait to schedule.
Yeah.
sounds like a good idea.
Yep.
Now, I notice that none of you are curious about the thing that's looming over my shoulder. That is my daughter and son-in-law's super automatic espresso machine, which failed. And so it's come to Dad to try and fix it. She only got the smell of something burning out of it. I plugged it in today to confirm her report, and I got smoke. So I feel much vindicated in my testing.
Have Tom take a look at it.
Who?
Have Tom take a look at it.
Oh, of course, yes.
The fire guy, who else, right?
Yeah.
To do something for his money, right? I do have a question about another thing, and that is the letter of support that the planning board was to send to city council and et al. Is that gone out, or is it going out, or what?
I think staff should prepare the letter and then we wind up all going in and signing it, or is it just over the chair's signature?
Where I was this time, and I think where we were last time, was that it goes over the chair's signature on behalf of the planning board, and that the letter itself had been circulated through the board, so everyone's seen that a couple times actually.
Okay.
And I can resend it to you, or you can delve into the dark hole that may be your inbox.
We don't want to go to my inbox.
Okay, want me to resend it?
No. But I think it should be on planning board letterhead.
It is already on planning board letterhead. I had an electronic copy of planning board letterhead.
So you think I should print it out?
You can either print it out and sign it like the old days, or you can insert an electronic image like the new days. But I think it's important to get it out there.
Okay. Let me make a note to myself. Here we go. Okay, such a note has been written. All right. If there is nothing else, then is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
See you,
Have a
kids.
good